All right, so who's ready to build a garage in under 15 minutes? So there might be some time-lapse magic in there to make that happen, but we're going to show you how this thing goes up. First, a big thanks to Bill and Yvonne from the Upside of Downsizing and our new neighbors for helping us out with the build and giving us the idea. They've got one of these too. So let's see how this goes together.
Hi, I'm Brian.
So to get started here, you can see Yvonne and Pam sorting out the pieces in the box to make sure everything's organized and that we've got everything, while Bill and I are building the end ribs. The end ribs are unique in their kind of feet, and at the peak they start and end the connection for the peak tubing. Now here we've got everyone building the inner ribbing. The inner ribs have different feet, and at the peak they've got a connection kind of in both directions for the peak tubing. Here we're going to stand up all the ribbing and connect it with a peak tube and something kind of along the eaves. There's a little bracket that connects each of the ribbings along the eaves of the tube as well. Now we're going to reposition the whole assembly to its final location. Here we're adding the lower support tubing between the ribs before we measure for square. And now we make sure it's square by checking both the faces and the diagonals. So here was probably the toughest part of the whole project. There was an earth anchor for each corner, and it just had kind of a screw type device on the end of it to drive into the dirt, but goes in about a foot, and you had to make sure just you didn't hit any rocks along the way or anything. So it took a while to position these and find 4 good spots that they would go in and meet up with the frame. Now it's time to start attaching the cover pieces. We'll start with the back wall here. And there are some ratcheting straps to pull the whole thing tight. you have to kind of undo. So we haven't really tightened any bolts at this point because you have to kind of undo things so that you can slip some of the tubing through the hanging mechanism of this end piece. So after you get that through there, you can start to tighten bolts up and tighten those ratchet straps to pull it tight. And repeat the process for the front wall, which of course has a big zipper door in it. Now we can drape the main cover over and start to tighten a lot more of the bolts so we can get everything more rigid now that we've got space and everything's kind of in place. The one thing we won't do yet is the bottom tubing pieces, because those are actually going to slip through some sleeves on that main cover to kind of pull everything tight, so we'll do that next. Here's where we start to undo the bottom tubing pieces one at a time. You kind of take them off, slide them through the little sleeve in the main cover, and then reattach them so that you can pull them tight, and that helps pull the cover down tight. And finally, one last tightening on all the ratchet straps. Now that everything's together, you can pull everything nice and tight, and you're good to go.
So there it is, 10 wide by 20 deep by 8 feet tall in the center at the peak there. This is pretty stable. We're going to pile gravel around the outside and inside. We're just going to gravel the floor. We'll put probably a strip of pallets around the outside of it, because we've got actually some things like furniture even in our storage unit that I think we're going to bring back here and put in there. So we'll get those up off the gravel will help, and even a line of pallets should protect them a little more. But I mean, this is the finished product. There's the door rolled up. It just has a door in the front. The back is solid. But it's on the ribs, and it pulls real tight to the ribs. It does, this side isn't too bad. The sagging between the ribs isn't real bad. That's about as tight as the top gets. There's ratchet straps to pull it tight, but all it does is kind of pull tight to those ribs, and it'll sag a little bit in between. It's not too bad. I'll probably put there's a pocket for a bar along this back edge. I'll probably put something there just as a little bit of weight. There are feet, obviously, where each of those ribs are that I may also stake to the ground, because right now it's only kind of staked. The stakes go a foot into the ground, but only at the corners. So that's all that's keeping it down right now. So I may add some stakes at all the feet. I mean, the ends are separate tarp pieces from the top. As you can see, it wraps over. So it should be watertight, except for maybe the very bottom, which is why the gravel and the pallets for anything we want up off the ground. On this side, it sags a tiny bit more in between the ribs, but not too bad. And I think the water will just run right off there. It shouldn't be too big of a deal. So that's it. Shelter Logic 10 by 20 by 8. The hardest part was getting the anchors into the ground in our ground, so we had to maneuver to find several spots. So it probably took, 3 to 4 hours other than those anchors getting in the ground. But that's it.
So here it is with the gravel floor in and a piece of electrical conduit as that roll-up mechanism on the front door. I also did a piece of that in the back just for extra weight and rigidity. Again, huge thanks to Bill and Yvonne, and thanks to everybody for watching. If you liked it, please give it a thumbs up and maybe share it with a friend. And click that subscribe button and come back and see what we're doing in the future. We're just getting started out here, so we'll see you on the next one. Thanks.